Wander Wealthy Podcast, episode 150 with Megan Mins. Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Wander Wealthy Podcast. My name is Tess Wicks. I'm the host, and it has been a wild ride. Last week we did a solo show, and before that we did a bunch of solo shows. We wrapped up the 12 Days of Money Mindset series back in December, and man, that was super fun. If you have not listened to the series yet, go back to episode, I believe it's 136. And start there. Start at day one. You'll know which day it is, day one. And it's pretty bingeable too, so you're going to love it. You can also get a downloadable checklist. There's going to be a new link other than the one that I mentioned in the episode, but just check it out in the description or in the show notes of each episode where to grab your checklist. And that series was leading up to the webinars that I've hosted now this week, which were amazing. And those webinars were leading to a brand spanking new program that I am hosting starting in January the 21st. So I know we're in January, but in a couple of weeks' time. If you're interested in that program, it's going to be an 8-week money mindset breakthrough group coaching program. There's going to be a lot of work to be done between you and your relationship with money. I'm going to be there to support you. If you're looking to make 2020 the year where you solve some of your biggest money problems, and before you can do all the money stuff, you really work on the mindset stuff, because we all know that mindset has to come before that. You're going to love this. So reach out to me if you want to learn about more details regarding this program. I'd love to chat with you and see if you would be a great fit for this. You can email me at tess@wanderwealthy.com or reach out to me in my DMs on Instagram at Tess_Wicks. And also, if you love this episode, share a screenshot. Let us know. Tag me and Megan. Her username is at Megan_Mins. Now let's talk about her. Megan Mins is a business coach for online entrepreneurs. She teaches entrepreneurs how to combine the power of planning, productivity, and mindset. All that together to achieve their goals while working less and having more fun through her program, Intuitive Execution. This is a juicy episode, and I think you guys are really going to love it, especially if you've been feeling that kind of grind and maybe on the verge of burnout, where productivity is becoming more of a trigger word to you rather than something that you're like, yes, I'm going to be productive today. And even if you do feel that, I think Megan has a really unique approach to productivity. It's not all about the sexy side of productivity, but about also including what she calls messy action or imperfect action and mindset work to make sure that you have basically a sustainable plan and action plan for your life and your business. So we dive deep into a lot of that stuff. Megan also opens up and shares a lot about her money story and some of the work that she's done even recently through her NLP certification. She's getting certified through the same program that I am getting certified through. And it's just such a great episode full of amazing tips and tricks, and Megan is so wise and shares so many great pieces, great nuggets for you. So let's dive into this week's episode. Here is number 150 with Megan Mins. Megan, welcome to the Wander Wealthy Podcast. I'm super stoked to have you on the show because we connected it feels like years ago now and haven't reconnected since. And so this is going to be a super fun conversation. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved when we got to connect in Chicago a couple years ago. So I'm really excited to chat today and talk a little bit about productivity and money together. So that should be a really good conversation.
Yeah, super juicy. First, let's just start with your story, because when I came to know you, I feel like you've gone through a lot of kind of even just business changes. So how did you get into the business that you originally started, and what was kind of the evolution story of where you are today?
Great question. My business has definitely gone through a lot of evolutions. I actually was originally working full-time in corporate human resources after college, and I enjoyed it, but I was not feeling very fulfilled creatively. And I had always been one of those people, I think a lot of us honestly feel this way, but I'd always been feeling equal parts left and right brained. And I pursued more of the, like logical stuff in college. And so I really was seeking some of that creativity back in my life. So I actually originally started my business as a graphic design business. And that just became from starting a blog because I was curious about it and realizing how much power you had to customize them. I made my first website when I was 11. So I loved figuring out HTML and CSS. And so I actually started out doing graphic design. So like branding, web design, and completely focused in the creative space and got a few clients on the side, even did custom handwriting services. So like wedding signs and logos and things like that. And it was really fun. But I very quickly learned that as much as I enjoy design, I actually don't like doing it for other people because you're pleasing someone else's aesthetic. And it really was stressful for me. So it was truly not the right niche for me. And I actually wasn't sure what to do next. I was still completely full-time in my HR job, wasn't making tons of money, and stumbled across the virtual assistant world. And this was back at the very beginning of 2015. I pivoted into being a virtual assistant and I loved it. I very quickly booked out all of the clients I could on the side of my job. And within that year, so I would say I pivoted in January or February of 2015. And by November, I was able to quit my HR job and just be a virtual assistant full time, which was really scary and super exciting.
Yeah.
And that was from 2015. So really since then, it's the end of 2019 when we're recording this, it was an evolution of advancing my skills, becoming an online business manager, working for one of my clients full time as her chief operation officer for quite a while. And then this year, I left that job and started doing my own thing again. And now I am a coach, which really was a really natural evolution out of direct services with clients and into helping the CEO in the way I loved helping them as their VA, as their online business manager, as their COO. I love strategizing with super visionary people and helping them grow their business and also be more productive, have more fun, stop burning out, and all the things we all seem to struggle with these days.
Yeah, it's kind of this perfect blend of like, I can help you get shit done.
Yep.
And let's take care of you. And I caught I don't know if it was in the bio or just a lot of your messaging is about like, and I so resonate with this. We build this business because we're craving some sort of freedom or, some higher purpose than just like the business. There are some people who have like a business that is the ultimate purpose for them. But for a lot of us, it's building this business so that we can spend more time with our family or our loved ones, our kids, our parents, or travel, or just do things that we aren't able to do in the corporate world. And so often, and I think you don't realize this when you like quit your job or you start running a business, all of a sudden you spend just as much time in your business that you were in the corporate world, if not more. And it can become really hectic and chaotic and actually lead to burnout. And that's kind of one of my biggest gripes or hesitations, or maybe it's even like a trigger for me to think about productivity as like, first, in a lot of ways, that leads me to thinking like, I'm going to work so hard, I'm going to burn out. And I love that you blend it with the mission of like, you can be productive and take care of yourself and build this business for what you ultimately wanted it for to support your lifestyle.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you just hit it right on the head that I think so often we start our business and suddenly the business becomes your entire life and it becomes your number one priority. It becomes what you do from waking to sleeping. You even dream about it. And while I think it's amazing to have a business you are so passionate about and you do love, I'm not saying you shouldn't love what you do by any means, but I think that over time, it's really easy for it to become all you do. I've worked with some clients who were meeting new people at a cocktail party and they told me that they felt like the only thing they had to talk about was business and they didn't really have anything else going on in their life. I mean, they have relationships and things, but they really didn't have hobbies. They didn't have fun things that they did just for the sake of fun. They felt like they were on this hamster wheel of just constantly working so hard on their business and spending every waking minute either trying to further their business or learn something that they need to further their business. And again, it's not all bad, but it can be really easy to fall into burnout. And I actually experienced what I call the burnout hamster wheel many times throughout that entire journey, where I was just working so hard and I was looking to productivity as the solution. And that's what I think is so interesting about how I help people now, is because people are still looking to productivity as the solution. And so I'll definitely talk about it. But the reality is that there's so much more, and productivity is kind of the band-aid solution. So I'm going to
Yeah.
speak to it to help you. But the clients I really work with, and the women and men who join intuitive execution or work with me one-on-one, they start to realize that most of it isn't productivity. That
Mhm.
productivity is a tool to use to help you be more intentional, but that truly the mindset, how you spend your time, building a framework to guide you, but then learning how to intuitively execute on it is the key to ditching burnout for good. Because if you do what I did, where you're just like thinking there's one hack, you're one hack away from like finally mastering everything, one productivity tip away, you are going to keep burning out, because it's just this mentality of working harder, and that's not going to get you where you want to go ultimately.
Yeah. And I think there's so much, as you had mentioned, mindset behind that, and a lot of blocks that people immediately put up around, well, if I stop working, or I, am not working as hard, if I take time for myself, in their mind, more work equals more money or more clients or more customers or whatever that looks like. How do you help your clients reframe that?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I mean, we do, especially the clients I work with one on one or who join my program, we actually spend the first part of our time together reframing some of those beliefs. Because if that is how you're believing the world to be, it's just how you're going to experience it. And so I do take my clients through a process of like acknowledging the beliefs that are holding them back. And then not only do we replace it with like a new belief, so, write out the opposite basically. We
Mm-hmm.
also go through and find evidence that supports the new belief, because I think for a lot of clients, and a lot of people, it can be really hard to just be like, I suddenly believe something new.
Right.
And one exercise that's been really helpful is, okay, if you want to believe and live your life in a way where you can making money is really easy, for example, you can absolutely find evidence of that in your life. So who do you know that has made money easily, either personally or seeing them online? Or have you ever experienced making money easily, like finding money, surprise money coming your way? And everyone I've worked with always has some evidence. And as soon as they acknowledge that, it becomes so much easier for them to believe it in their own life. And then I work with my clients to also do what I call as a daily mindset ritual or routine. Because as you're shifting some of these foundational beliefs, I do think it's really helpful to intentionally work on that in the morning with your mindset work. So whether it's journaling or affirmations or even tapping, there's a lot of different mindset tools that you can use. And I work with my clients to every single day reinforce that foundation and strengthen it like a muscle so that it becomes more and more of their reality.
Yeah. And I think that's really important to have it be that daily routine, because you're, even after finding the proof of other people, you can see that, but as you had mentioned, it's hard to jump from, I need to work more to make more money, to, oh, it can be easier, I don't have to grind so hard and I can still make good money. It's hard to make that jump. A lot of times what we end up doing is going, well, it's easy for them, but for some
Hmm.
reason it's not, I don't have the magic pill or whatever it is. And then we go
Yeah.
seeking the band-aid solution again.
Absolutely. And this is something that I love. I am a former perfectionist at heart and was always holding myself back from that and always looking to external sources or people for decisions and validation. And one of the things that really transformed my life, that's a part of how I work with people, is taking imperfect action. And it has to be an intentional decision, especially for people who've struggled with that. It's not something you're going to do accidentally. And so I love encouraging people to pick one project that they're working on and commit to taking imperfect, fast action on it. I actually did that with my podcast at the beginning of 2019, and I ended up launching it in 23 days because I committed to just taking imperfect action. I didn't have to have the perfect launch. I didn't have to have the perfect intro. I didn't have to have the perfect description or artwork. I knew it could all change. I just needed to show myself that I could take imperfect action. I could show up imperfectly, leave room for mistakes, and just do my best with the information and knowledge I already had and just get started. And it was the most incredible experience. And it was very easy and it felt fun and it didn't feel stressful at all. And I was able to launch really quickly and then continue to do the podcast this whole year and just continue to have that mentality. And once you intentionally decide to do that with one project and you realize it can work, you can, whether it's a money-making project or not, you can do it. You can show up that way. The world won't end. You'll still get clients or listeners or complete what you were, trying to complete. And you'll realize how much better it was, how much more of a fun experience it was. And you'll pretty quickly become addicted to approaching things that way. And you'll suddenly start to trust yourself more, reinforce your own intuition, learn that you have the answers inside of you. And it can be a really great starting point for learning how to intuitively execute and really run your business in a different way than you ever have before.
I love that advice too, because so many of us get wrapped up into, we can't start until I have, the perfect logo or the perfect whatever. And it's so funny because most people are looking at everyone else. They're looking at your podcast now and going, well, her podcast is so well put together. And it's like, yeah, but if you rewind and go back into the archives of anybody's podcast, Instagram, YouTube, whatever it is, you're going to find something that you are probably embarrassed for them of because it's outdated and they've just continued to iterate it into a better place since then.
And I think it's also really funny that you say that because I think when you are looking at someone else's business and the work they're doing, it's so easy to view it as perfect from an outside perspective. But even my current state of the podcast, I don't view it as perfect. I know that every description probably could be more strategic. I know maybe I could format it better. I know that even every interview, like genuinely, even approaching our chat today, it was like, I may not show up perfectly, but I'm going to show up as me, and that's enough. And I take that same approach with every episode I record or anything in my business. And so just know that even if you're looking at someone else's work and you think that it's perfect, on the inside, that person still sees things to improve, still sees mistakes, things they could do better, things they want to do that they're not doing. And so it's really all about perspective. And we don't really need to look at other people as executing anything perfectly, because I think the people who really show up and the people we look up to have usually done a decent amount of work to try to overcome perfectionism and just start taking action.
Yeah. And that just, also explains the fact that someone is going to be looking at your whatever it is that you're trying to start and thinking that yours looks perfect. And so we all are our, worst critic or our hardest, toughest critic. I'd also like to talk about perfectionism and how it can really be paralyzing. And it's kind of like, I feel like it's become more and more popular to go perfectionism is a form of procrastination.
Yes.
And once I saw you had posted this, I don't know what it's called, but it's the diagram of like the 3 overlapping circles.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like you have an approach that I think is really smart because it's not, we can get so caught up in the planning, which then we can get really perfectionist about. And I think planning can become just a source of procrastination too. And so it was like planning and I'm probably going to butcher this, but I think it was like planning and action and something else.
Yeah.
You tell me.
Yeah, no, that's my 3-part intuitive execution framework. And
there you go.
Essentially there are 3 circles in this Venn diagram that all come together to allow you to intuitively execute. And so you're definitely looking at planning is a part of it. I think planning is really important and critical, but you are so right. Procrastinating is very real, very easy, and such a trap because you feel like you're moving things forward. But the reality is that you can absolutely just plan everything and do nothing.
Right.
So planning has a role, but it is not the end all be all. So planning is important. And then there's also a big mindset piece involved as well, where we want to make sure your beliefs, like we were just talking about, are supporting what you want to do. We want to make sure you are in the right mindset to work towards and achieve the goals you're setting out to achieve, because if your mindset isn't there, you're going to be held back and you're not going to be able to achieve those goals, or you're not going to be happy with the way you achieve them.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last part is definitely all about the imperfect action. It's ditching perfectionism. It's, showing up in a way where you are enough. You learn to trust yourself and you learn to just take imperfect, fast action. So it's really the three pieces of, we do want to have the planning, we want to have the right mindset, and we want to take imperfect, fast action. And all three come together to allow you to intuitively execute. And when it comes to intuitively execute, and the thing that's really changed the game for me over the past year in particular is building this framework. So I love the productivity tactics and planning and goal setting. It is all important. So I consider that all my framework. So I have strategic goals. I have strategic plans for my business. I know how I want to spend my time, like a weekly ideal schedule, routines. I have that framework in place. But the difference is I'm not stressed out about executing it perfectly. I'm not worried about showing up the same every single day, because we are cyclical creatures and we just can't expect that of ourselves, especially if we're women. We are even more so cyclical creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And often we can feel like we're broken or something is wrong with us if we expect ourselves to show up in the same way at the same capacity day in and day out. So my framework kind of looks a little bit more like that, like what you typically see. It's my day-to-day framework, but I execute on that intuitively on a day-to-day basis. So depending on how I'm feeling, what's going on in my personal life, my business, and when I don't follow it perfectly, I don't consider myself flaky or like a failure or anything's wrong or broken. It's just that I listened to my body. I listened to my inspiration. I listened to my intuition, and I did what I needed to do that day. So it's really this permission to like be flexible. So we have the framework to guide us, but then we intuitively and flexibly execute on it on a day-to-day basis. And it's really transformative when you start giving yourself permission to do that.
Yeah, it makes everything so much more, I don't know, like everything in moderation, as opposed to thinking that you're going to be like 100% productive for the, full 8 hours of every day.
Yeah.
If you plan to work 8 hours a day. I don't.
Absolutely. Right. That's not what I'm here for.
Sometimes I work 12 hours though, but it's a cyclical thing.
Yeah, it can be seasonal and cyclical. And I think the real thing is just letting it be intentional, because I think so many times working 12 hours a day isn't something you intentionally do. It's something you kind of accidentally do sometimes. And so I think it's a lot about intention and, making that conscious choice of working or playing and having fun. And a big thing that I've been focused on this year, and I help my clients and students with, is bringing back the fun, and not just from hobbies, but even in your business. I truly have been making decisions this year from a place of which sounds more fun instead of which has the highest ROI. And I'm not saying they're mutually exclusive. You don't have to be either or, but incorporating fun into the decision-making process is something not enough of us do. And it really allows you to have fun while you're working. And even on the days where you do decide to work 12 hours, at least you're filling your time with projects and work that you're like feeling really excited and inspired, and like it feels fun to do it.
Yeah. I would say the days that I work more than, my 6 to 7 hour window is because I'm like, I just don't want to stop working.
I love that.
Very rarely am I pushing to hit some sort of deadline, which was not the case when I was in kind of the corporate world. And
Yeah.
so it's an entirely different feeling, which I think is really wonderful about building a business, that you can allow fun inside of it.
I love that. Yeah, you definitely should have fun in your business. And I just know for me, I was always looking at externally. And so I was looking for someone else's strategy or someone else's solution. And I would try to execute on that perfectly, like as quickly as possible. And it was just a totally different way of operating than the way
Yeah.
I do now.
Yeah, I think looking at others' strategies can, almost be sabotaging to yourself, just because I mean, even if they're pursuing a strategy, it might not even be working for them. Like, we have no idea.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good point. We just like assume it does. But I think that's also so interesting because one of the things I did a lot, especially when I started my business, but really over the years, even still find myself struggling with this, is the temptation to buy a ton of courses, just like trying to find this magic pill solution. And I
Mm.
still really love investing in courses, and I am absolutely in courses and programs right now presently. But I think what's really shifted for me is I'm not looking at that course or that strategy as like, this is the only answer. This is the magic pill. Like, they are right. I am wrong. Like, this is it. And putting all my stock in that strategy working perfectly. And instead, what I'm allowing myself to do is view it as a resource. So I'm going into the program with a clear intention. I am taking what I like and what feels fun and exciting and good and easy, and the things that don't feel good or don't resonate with me, or I have a better idea on how I want to implement it, then I will let myself do that. And so I view the courses I make investments in more as a resource and a tool versus like this thing that has to work to get me to the next level. I don't shift the responsibility on the course creator. I keep the responsibility on myself to see the results I want to. And I'm just using their course as a resource and a tool to help me potentially get there faster, a little easier, using their templates or things like that. So it's definitely a big shift of perspective.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. There's so much we could dive into on that, because I do think, especially with there's so many courses out there now. It's becoming the new, just buy a book on Amazon and buy a course as well.
Yep.
And it can be really easy to think that your success is going to come from the next course that you buy, as opposed to, your own skills and unique abilities and intuition of how you should be running your business, how you should be marketing it, what the next thing is that you should be creating. And I found, I have some clients who they really look to the courses to be the solution. And I love that you have reframed that as like the course is a resource. And not only a resource of like how you can build it, but also with the information inside. It's like, read the book and buy the course to get the answer of the one thing that you're looking for now, and don't think it's going to like necessarily turn your entire business around. You could find the thing, but like take that pressure off of the course because you have it already inside of yourself.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting, because like I said, I've been in a lot of courses, and I have my own courses, but like I've absolutely been the student before. And if you're listening and if you've ever felt this way, you'll understand. But I've definitely been the student myself, where I was in the course and I had a question on something, and I would maybe post in the Facebook group or send an email, and I felt like I couldn't move forward until I got that answer. Like I felt stuck, and there was like frustration around that or negative feelings. And I felt this like, I can't believe they haven't answered me yet. It's been like an hour or whatever. And what's really interesting is when you're in that state, you're putting the responsibility of like being creative and finding a solution and trusting yourself. You're putting that all on the other person. And that's when it's a really dependent relationship. And it's not healthy in the long run. And so if you ever find yourself in that way, you don't need to feel bad about it. But let it be like a red flag that's like, okay, I'm not trusting my intuition here. I'm not being resourceful. I'm not taking responsibility. I can still ask the question, but like ask the question and then try to keep going. And when you get the clarity or the answer, if it does shift things, you can always adjust. But you don't want to necessarily put yourself in that situation where you feel like dependent on the answer and stuck otherwise. So that can be like a good temperature check for where you're at with your course and how you're viewing it in your life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And I think I kind of think of it as like when you're letting someone else determine like what your next step is going to be, you're giving away your power. And you want to like your power is the magic pill. Yep. It is the magic thing. You just have to leverage it and harness it and use it and trust it. And, so much more likely you developing something and bringing it to the world in a way that is unique and fun for you, that you like, and it can be pieced together through other, examples, other people's courses, whatnot. That's going to sell and, provide the success that you might be looking for way more than taking someone else's blueprint and just plopping it on, into your business.
Absolutely. So true.
Okay. We had great conversation around all of that stuff, and we got to get to the money stuff now. And we skipped this in the beginning because I was like, we're just like going full speed into the productivity conversation. But I would love to know a little bit more about your money story and specifically how you grew up around money, and maybe you had a good or not so great relationship with money growing up, or you learned good things or not so great things, and how, you've worked on your relationship with money and what it is like now. So start with how you grew up around money.
Okay, great. So I grew up around money, and I would say there were good things and bad things about it. So the good thing was that I do feel like the way I was raised helped me view money as abundant. Like we never really fortunately, we never felt, let me rephrase, as a child, I never felt that we were in a bad money situation. It always seemed like there were funds to buy clothes or eat or, join school programs. And so I do feel like being raised that way helped me feel like money is accessible and abundant, which is really helpful. But I think the bad thing as I got older was that I never was responsible for managing money. I never had to do chores. So I never learned, I never had that relationship of making and managing and keeping and saving money. And I think what that really led to as an adult was this perspective of avoiding money, like avoiding even looking at money, managing money. And I also had this really strong belief that I was bad at managing money. And a lot of those came after I finally did start managing money in college when I got, a debit card, and I opened up a credit card and started learning how to manage money. I never felt like I was good at it. And I started to develop these beliefs that I was really bad at managing money. And I think that came full circle for me when I graduated college and I started my HR job. And it was definitely in a high level corporate situation where it was client facing, you needed to look really good. And I spent tons of money on clothes and shoes and purses and trying to show up in this way. I felt like I had to. And after college, I actually ended up in quite a bit of credit card debt. And it was so scary and terrifying. And I felt so bad about it for so long. I just felt like I was bad with money. I don't know enough. I'm not smart. I really reinforced a lot of those bad money beliefs in that period of life, which is so foundational. The first time I was handling money, I felt like I just struggled with managing it. Thankfully, that started to shift when I intentionally decided to get out of debt, shifted the way I was spending, stopped looking at clothing as or shopping as an emotional release, which I do think I grew up kind of shopping as a way to feel good. Mm-hmm. And really for me, since starting a business though, I did clear all my debt, which felt amazing, but I really carried that belief that I was bad at managing money, honestly, until this year. It varied in severity. Sometimes it felt stronger than others, and I was still making money in business. So the abundant mindset I had a belief that I was really good at making money, but I think where the belief that I was bad at managing money came in was managing and moderating expenses. Like I said, I invested in a lot of courses. And so that wasn't always looking good for the money. And even this year, I noticed myself, just like I was talking about with courses and how as a student, you can shift responsibility to the course creator. I noticed myself this year struggling to I was shifting the responsibility of my business finances to other people, which is terrible. And so I really have done a lot of work this year on taking back the ownership for not just making money, but managing it and fostering a really healthy relationship where I look at my money every day and I feel really grateful for it. I've done a few little things to make that gratitude feeling even easier. But I know you know this, but I am in an NLP certification program. And what's been really cool about learning those techniques is there's also really potent techniques to shift limiting beliefs and limiting decisions and release some of those. And honestly, the most transformative thing I've done for my money mindset, besides the tactics of tracking it and actively managing it better and making less investments, was truly doing some of those more powerful NLP and time techniques to release some of those limiting decisions. And it was so transformative and really made it easy for me to finally truly step up and make some tough decisions on what I want the business to look like and the changes I want to make, both on how I'm making money and how I'm spending money to get there and how I want to show up in managing it on a day-to-day basis. So it's definitely been an evolution over my entire life. And I honestly feel like I don't know that I'll ever have a quote unquote perfect money mindset. I'm sure as I continue to grow, new things will pop up for me, but I actually feel really good about money management, maybe for the first time in my adulthood lately. So it's definitely been a journey.
That's amazing. I think it's really cool when you get to a point where you're like, ooh, money feels good now. Like I'm enjoying this as opposed to dreading it or living in avoidance. And that can definitely lead to, other spirals. But once you make that shift, it is really, I don't know, it's fun, I think.
Yeah, it's really fun.
I'm the money girl though.
I know you are. And I think that I really fell into the trap where, I think a lot of business owners can, where you're really focused on the sales and the revenue and less focused on the profit. And that was something that this year when I left my full-time job with my client and came back into my business, I had higher expenses than I had before. And so it was a reprioritization of I love making money. I think it's so much fun to make money. And the part that I needed to make fun was the managing of the money, the expenses, and focusing on the profit and really making decisions where profit is the priority and not just the top line. So I think that was a big shift for me.
Yeah. Another question kind of in regards to that and specifically around your shift from the full-time client that you had to building out your own coaching business now is there's definitely a shift in terms of what income looks like for you then. And I know that making money, abundance is easy for you, but did you have any sort of work that you had to do around here's a I'm assuming you were making more of a consistent income with the full-time client and you knew exactly what that was going to look like versus now you have coaching clients, those can be more ebb and flow, and then you have courses and launches and whatnot. How did you make that shift?
Yeah, great question. So absolutely, when I was working with my client full time, I had a very high paying, very, very nice salary with a consistent monthly income, which was awesome. And it really was lovely to have that. But what was interesting is to make the shift to being a full-time business owner again. I do have a husband who has a job. And so we were definitely in agreement about what was okay, what we were comfortable with reinvesting. And thankfully, we did have his income to support our family. And that was a huge relief, especially compared to when I made that transition the first time in 2015. I didn't have that. And it was much scarier. So this felt like more of a transition that was in alignment with our future dreams for our family. We want to have children. We want that flexibility. And I just am really ambitious and have a lot of dreams for myself that that do and will fulfill me. So on one hand, we of course had those kind of money conversations, but on the other hand, I actually started booking out my one-on-one clients before my job ended. And my boss, my client, who's now like one of my best friends, but we were totally on the same page about that. So there wasn't any actual overlapping work, but I started booking the clients. So what that meant is that my first month out of the full-time job, I made more money in the business than I did from my salary. So that was great. So that's what I'm kind of talking about. Like the revenue has been looking really good. So I've actually been making more money in the business than my full-time job ever since. But it doesn't necessarily mean I'm paying myself what my salary used to pay me, with lots of things like saving money for the business, investing in a team, software systems, all that good stuff. Not necessarily paying myself what I did with the salary, but I think booking out the clients in advance was so helpful, made me feel much more comfortable, especially since they were longer term coaching packages. I knew what my money was going to be looking like for a little while. And then over the course of the year, I launched some courses and group coaching programs, and definitely did experience a little bit more of that typical launch roller coaster where you have like your baseline money that comes in consistently. And then some months are really, really high and other months are like way lower. And so that's actually what I'm working on now in my business, is starting to offer and create some funnels so that I can make money more consistently and launch less often, specifically for my intuitive execution course and some other things I have in the works. So it's definitely been a learning curve though, and I've been letting myself imperfectly take action and intuitively execute on all of this. So, the first version of intuitive execution looked totally different than the current version. And, I'm retiring some courses that I've sold for like 3 years now. And so it's definitely a season of pivoting and simplifying and also setting the business up to make more money, be more scalable, support working with more people. So it's been quite an evolution.
Very cool. Thank you very much for sharing all of that. We're
Yeah,
going to
of course.
move into the quick and dirty Q&A round. These are just a couple fast-paced questions to wrap up the show. And number one is something random that you just have been kind of obsessed with or you can't stop thinking about lately.
Yes. Well, anyone who follows my podcast will know that I love reading fantasy fiction. And I read this book series earlier this year that I've honestly reread like 5 times. And I just still love it. And I can't stop thinking about the characters. And I still want to live in that book universe. And the book is called A Court of Thorn and Roses. So if you're into romantic fiction, it's the best book I've ever read. And I tell everyone that. But so like that book, like I'm the person scrolling Instagram and like see memes about the books and I like read them and send them to my friends. I can't quit it.
Amazing. Well, I was going to ask, what's something you love to do in your free time that totally differentiates you from your business? Anything beyond reading romantic fantasy fiction?
Absolutely. Playing computer games, and specifically like The Sims and Roller Coaster Tycoon. If you ever played Roller Coaster Tycoon back in the day when we were kids, they have the original version on iPad, and it's like the same game, and it's just on iPad, and it's magical and amazing. And those are my those two things plus reading fiction are just like my favorite things to do. And I used to be the person who read a lot for personal development, and I still do that when I want to, but reading for fun and playing these games is just so delightful. Such a release from trying to be a better person or make more money. It's just like guilty pleasures, but I don't feel guilty about them at all.
Yes. And going back to what we had talked about way earlier is like, we need to have hobbies outside of only being able to talk about our businesses.
Absolutely. Yes.
Who is your favorite any account or person to follow on social media?
This is such a hard one for me because I honestly follow a lot of people I really enjoy, but I also don't spend that much time consuming content these days. But one blogger or influencer who I just always watch her stories when they come up on Instagram. Her name is Jess Keys. She's actually in Chicago. I think her handle is like JESSKEYS _. She's just like the most delightful human and always so positive, and I don't know. And she's also got great style. So she's probably the person I just always watch her stories when they pop up.
Very cool. The best piece of money advice that you have been told that you would like to pass along?
Well, I've already talked about a lot about like prioritizing profit over revenue. And that's definitely one of them. But I think something else I read in a book recently that stuck out to me was this idea of, especially when it comes to managing money in your business, is not over delegating too quickly, which I think is something that I was really looking to do when I picked my business back up this year. Was like, oh, I'm going to just go ahead and hire all the people I need right now. And what I realized was that that's not always bad, but it can obviously be higher expenses, and over delegating can actually slow things down in some ways. So I thought that was just a really surprising piece of advice, because so often we hear about how you need to delegate more and hire more. Outsource everything. And I'm not saying not to, but it was a really nice, refreshing perspective and really made me look at things a little differently.
Yeah, that's awesome. Megan, this has been so much fun. You've shared so many wonderful tips and little pieces and nuggets of knowledge that we can take with us and implement into our lives and our businesses. So thank you very much for coming on the show and sharing all of that. I'd love for you to tell us where we can find you on the interwebs and how we can continue to follow along with you.
Thank you. This has been so much fun. So I am definitely on Instagram. So if you want to follow me there, my username is just Megan_Mins. And if anyone knows whoever owns just Megan Mins, let me know, because I can't contact them. I've been trying. But that's my Instagram handle. I'm definitely active on Instagram the most of all the social media platforms. You can also find my website at meganmins.com. And I do have a YouTube channel, and that's just meganmins.com/YouTube. And I also have a podcast called The Productive Life with Megan Mins. And you can go again to just meganmins.com to find out more, or search The Productive Life on your favorite podcast player. And I also have a free training. So if you are really interested in some of the stuff that we talked about today, in particular around ditching burnout, ditching perfectionism, learning how to intuitively execute and take imperfect action, you will love this free training. It's called How to Go from Burned Out and Busy to Clear and Confident. And you can go to meganmins.com/wealthy to go ahead and get access to that free training right now.
Amazing. We can't wait to send people that way and check out the free training. I think I might tune in myself. Thank you again for coming on the show, Megan.
Thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful, and it was so good to chat.
And that's a wrap. Episode 150 with Megan Mins. You guys know where to go, but if you don't, to get to the show notes, you can go to wanderwealthypodcast.com/podcast/episode 150. Now, don't forget, I am going to be hosting a live group coaching program called Money Mindset Breakthrough. And if you're ready to break through on your money mindset this year, if you've been feeling some resistance or feeling like you're holding yourself back because of maybe some limiting beliefs, or maybe you're even feeling like part of you wants to do this thing that's going to change the trajectory of your life, but the other part of you thinks that, maybe you should just stay where you're at. Whatever that looks like, or you want to rechange and rework your beliefs and your programming around work and business and what work and productivity need to mean. All of this links back to money, and we're going to be diving into it over the course of 8 weeks. I'm stepping you through all of it because I think it's really important to have that starting point to understand why all of this stuff works and how it works for you, how the subconscious mind works and is programmed, how to understand some of the techniques that we're going to be sharing and how those are going to really work. You change your money reality and change what your future with money could look like, and so much more. So if you want to get into the program, I have some special codes that are going to be expiring by next Monday, especially if you didn't hop on the webinar. If you hopped on the webinar, you know all about this. But if you didn't catch the webinar, then send me an email, tess@wanderwealthy.com, or reach out to me on Instagram in the DMs, Tess_Wicks, and we can talk about the Money Mindset Breakthrough program. Just make sure you mention that, tell me you're interested, and we'll talk about whether it's a good fit for you or not. I'm only accepting a handful of people into this program because it is the first time I'm running this. I'm running it after getting certified in neurolinguistic programming, emotional freedom technique, hypnosis, time, so many different techniques and methodologies to really rewire your mindset. And I know how to apply it specifically to money. and work and the things that lead to money. So if that sounds like something you're ready for and you're ready to make some big shifts in 2020, we're going to be meeting over the course of 8 weeks, and it's going to be a wonderful, intimate experience. So reach out to me. I'd love to chat. And until next time, you guys, I hope you wander wealthy.